Compassion of Libertarianism will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer with a look back at some of the week's top stories. China said it is evaluating a U.S. offer for trade talks to reduce tariffs. U.S. President Donald Trump had previously said talks were already underway, something Beijing denied. FSN's Nick Harper reports from Washington.
These are some of the most positive noises so far coming from China, with it saying that it's open to the possibility of talks. Last week, Donald Trump claimed talks were already underway and that he'd spoken to the Chinese leader Xi Jinping. However, his own US trade representative, Jameson Greer, confirmed that talks had not yet begun. Donald Trump maintains there is a very good chance of reaching a deal. As it stands, there is a 145% tariff on all Chinese goods entering the United States. I'm Nick Harper in Washington.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, who won re-election to officially replace former leader Justin Trudeau, warned that the U.S. president is trying to break Canada. While Carney won the Liberal Party another term in office, it is still early to tell if his party will hold the majority of 172 seats in Parliament. FSN's Kate Fisher has more.
Mark Carney argued that US President Trump had fundamentally changed the world, and he said his proposal to take over Canada is not an idle threat.
As I've been warning for months, America wants our land, our resources, our water, our country. President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never, ever happen.
Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre, who until recently had been expected to win, is now projected to also lose his seat in the legislature. Kate Fisher, Washington.
Israel's Air Force carried out an airstrike on the Syrian capital Damascus overnight, saying it was part of a warning to the new government not to attack the country's Druze community, a minority sect that is an offshoot of Islam with followers in Syria, Lebanon, and Israel. From Tel Aviv, Trent Murray has more.
The IDF said it struck an area adjacent to the presidential palace in Damascus without further details on the target. In a joint statement with his defense minister, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the strike was a clear message to the Syrian regime that Israel will not allow Syrian forces to deploy south of Damascus or pose any threat to the Druze community. It comes after days of clashes between gunmen from the Sunni Muslim and Druze communities, stoking fears of further civil and sectarian violence in Syria after years of civil war, which in recent months has subsided after the fall of the Assad regime. Trent Murray, Tel Aviv.
The Pakistani government has hiked security measures in Pakistan-administered Kashmir. This follows accusations from India blaming Pakistan for a terror attack in Indian-administered Kashmir last week that killed 26 people, a charge which Islamabad denies. FSN's Hira Mustafa reports from Islamabad.
Pakistani authorities have restricted tourist access to sensitive areas and popular destinations in the Kashmir region. The government has also mandated a 10-day closure for all religious seminaries in the area. Pakistan has already announced a daily closure of airspaces over its two largest cities, Karachi and Lahore, for 8 hours each day throughout May. The United States is encouraging both Islamabad and New Delhi to dial back tensions and try to resolve the standoff through diplomacy. Hira Mustafa, Islamabad.
The U.S. and Ukraine signed a long-awaited minerals deal giving Washington access to Kyiv's rare earth minerals. Under the U.S.-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund, Kyiv will retain full control over its natural resources. The U.S. economy shrank in the first 3 months of the year, fueling fears of a looming recession amid an ongoing trade war. FSN's Mitch McCann reports.
Gross domestic product, which measures the monetary value of goods and services produced during a certain time period, decreased in the United States during the first 3 months of the year by 0.3%, according to a report from the U.S. Commerce Department. The figure represents the first contraction in the U.S. economy in 3 years and covers the period before the highest tariffs were implemented in early April. It's also a notable turnaround from the 2.4% growth recorded during the final months of last year. Part of the reason for the contraction is due to a significant increase in imports, soaring 41% as businesses stockpile goods to beat the tariffs.
Those were some of the week's top stories.
The Onion looks back at This Week in History. On July 17, 1980, Ronald Reagan accepted the nomination for president at the Republican National Convention in Detroit and delivered a speech in which he boldly promised that during his presidency, someone would body slam Andre the Giant. While admitting that the road would be long and hard, and that it might take as long as 7 years and 2 WrestleManias to get there, the former California governor vowed that under his administration, somebody, perhaps Ricky the Dragon Steamboat or a hulked-up Hulk Hogan, would grab hold of the 500-pound behemoth and send his massive body smashing to the mat. The Republican nominee also went on to promise that by the end of his first term, Joni would marry Chachi, hair metal would achieve mainstream airplay, and Shelley Long would successfully make the leap from television to film.
This is the Onion News Network.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. Talk radio you control. Give us a call. Get your thoughts on the air. The phone number here to the studio is 603-283-6160. Are you tired of the oppressive rules and moderation of the big tech social media sites? Our Mastodon server at social.freetalklive.com can set you free. Mastodon is free, open source, decentralized, and federated. Multiple apps are available for iOS, Android, Windows, Mac, and Linux. Social.freetalklive.com. In the studio tonight, it's Stu.
And Mr. Penguin.
And we were in a story, 12 reasons U.S. consumers are experiencing more financial stress than most realize. Number 10 on this list. We did number 10. Number 11 on this list. U.S. consumers are not spending as much money at hair salons, and Bloomberg is telling us that this is an indicator that a recession is coming. Stylists from Manhattan to rural New Hampshire are seeing regular clients start to skip cuts and blowouts. And in from the main town of Brewer, hairstylist Alyssa Dow said customers are choosing cheaper, more low-maintenance looks and tipping less. In affluent Longmeadow, Massachusetts, where people don't like to walk around with roots showing, clients who previously got color every 2 or 3 weeks are stretching it to 4 or 5, citing the political situation and implying they've lost money in the stock market, said Michelle LaValle. They're cutting back in other areas as well, so it's not just us, said the salon owner who has 28 years in the business. Certainly, it's one standard that people get used to, and
I feel like if you have to cut back on your hair as a result of the economic situation, you probably shouldn't have been getting those haircuts in the first place.
Yeah, maybe a $400 haircut was unnecessary, even in good times, huh?
Yeah.
Number 12 on this list, according to the U.S. Fed, U.S. consumers are becoming more concerned about inflation and unemployment, as they should be. The central bank's monthly survey of customer expectations showed that respondents saw inflation a year from now at 3.6%, an increase of half a percentage point from February and the highest reading since October 2023. Along with concerns of a higher cost of living came a surge in worries of the labor market. The probability that the unemployment rate would be higher a year from now surged to 44%, a move up of 4.6 percentage points, and the highest level going back to the early COVID pandemic days of April 2020. So, there you have the list of 12 reasons that consumers are experiencing more financial stress. So I don't think this is going to get any better anytime soon. It should, by my estimation, get a whole lot worse. And then, it could get better, but it depends on what they do.
I mean, I have a hard time imagining it's going to get better, but it's like one of these things where it's like we're kind of heading in a spiral in the wrong direction, and we have been, and it's not something that's been, we're talking about, we're seeing it now kind of all come collapsing down, but like this is something that's kind of been, we've been heading in this direction, and I think Trump's right about one aspect of it, for a really long time. I think he may have said like 40 years at some point here recently, but it's probably been much longer than that in the sense. It's probably been since the 30s at least.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. The tariffs thing is gonna put a pinch, and it can get better relatively quickly. I don't know what they're going to do about the inflation thing, unless there's a repudiation of the national debt, but that's not going to happen. Not in the way that a lot of people think anyways. There may be some deal worked out, and they might work out like, a deal to abandon their obligations to the dollar pending an agreement of CBDC and like who knows, but they're not just going to say, hey, sorry, we burnt you, the rest of the world, and then ditch out on all that obligation.
It's interesting because in some respects, it's amazing how long we've managed to stretch it out already. But, the thing is, you can stretch stuff out a really, really long time. And, and I'm not the kind of person who goes around saying, oh, the world's or the economy's collapsing or the world's collapsing or whatever. But there is, I think, something to be said by people who think the situation is sort of we're heading towards an economic collapse, and I think there's some truth to that. It's just it kind of reminds me of the Soviet Union. I'm trying to think which president it was who said this exactly, but he said something about socialism was always bound to collapse, right? And I think we can see that in our own Western democracies, in that we've also implemented socialism, and it looks different, but it's there. And if it was true of communist style socialism, why wouldn't it be true of Western democracy style socialism? So
and it's ultimately it's the bankers that are in charge of everything, and these guys don't these guys don't
huge
have
influence.
They don't have national pride the way that your average American does. They don't have any attachment to the United States of America emotionally, or like they'll throw this entire country under the bus just as fast as anybody else.
This is one of the things that I'm not under any illusion that cryptocurrencies are going to magically solve the problem, but it's sort of the first step to solving the problem of somebody else controlling you. The banks controlling you, the government controlling you. And it's just that first step, but it's amazing how resistant people are to change, and how much they don't want. I mean, even they cannot fathom that there is somehow a better way, right? And I don't understand this, but that's most people. It's like they don't want to learn. They don't want to, even if it's something easy, it's like they don't want to learn. They don't want to read the manual. It's like it's funny. People every once in a while will get a customer who calls up my company, and they've managed to put a whole computer together basically by themselves, like a desktop system. Plug the monitor, plug a keyboard in, plug the mouse in, and then they can't seem to figure out how to turn it on. And it just kind of always kind of like how do you end up in that situation? But people don't read the manual. It's like there's a little manual. It's a quick start guide that is included with every computer, and it literally tells you, look for the symbol, and there's a power symbol, and look for the symbol, and you'll find the power button. And there's only, and the funny thing is, most of the time there's only one button, maybe two buttons at most on these systems. So it's like, how do you get to a point where you hook it all up and then not be able to figure out how to turn it on? And it's like, it's the same way with every system you've ever bought or used, pretty much, or device. I don't know, but people really hate learning, and they hate reading manuals. They hate education.
Yeah, they do. It's sad. I just started a new paper book, which is the thing I've gotten out of the practice of because, time, and now you can get all your audio books and podcasts and everything. So, but I did start reading James Corbett's new book. So that should be a good read. But right now we've got Sarah in New Mexico on the phone. Sarah, how's it going?
Oh, good evening. Nice to talk with you.
We were actually just talking about you in a conversation when we were talking about the malls in the story that we just read. The mall there in Albuquerque is still open, is that correct?
Are you talking about the mall?
The shopping mall, yes.
Oh, yes. I think we have several shopping malls, yes.
Oh, you have several. Okay.
Yes, we have Coronado Mall, we have Cottonwood Mall, we have the Windmuck Mall. So
I was thinking of Cottonwood. That's the one that I went to when I was in Albuquerque. I didn't know of the others. Anyways, so those are still open. Are they? Do they have like regular business, or are they just wide open parking lots? Nobody inside.
What happened? The Windmuck Mall was going down, so they revived it. They put a little lake. And they have apartment rentals, and they even built the Hilton hotels with a rooftop, a bar. So so they're just having
yeah, and they did one of these mixed things where they have residential and
mixed use
commercial.
Yeah,
so, yeah, it's an idea. They did one of these in Salt Lake. I think the idea is to move people to where the shopping is so that they spend more money there.
Kind of like strip malls.
Anyways, all right. Thanks for that information, Sarah. What'd you call in about tonight?
Yeah, so I just want to say that, now there's 11 people running for mayor. And, I'm just going to stick with, how most people vote for the incumbent? At least they know what they're getting.
Yeah, that's why they have an 80% chance at success.
Well, yeah. The thing is that if you go with a new person, you might get even turned out worse. That's the dangers of it. It's isn't that's what I'm afraid of? And
it's the devil you know versus the devil that you don't know. That's right.
Well, yeah. Yeah. So then. All the other candidates, the one thing that I know about our current mayor is that he did the ACS. This happened while he was mayor. It's called the Albuquerque Community Service Vehicles. And if you got a drunk passed out close to your house on a sidewalk, and you could always call them out, and they'll check him out, give him some water, make sure that he's not ODing, and they'll take him to wherever they need to. And it turns out that I talked to a lady who worked for the fire department. Before this, they were doing all day long, picking up passed out bodies all over Albuquerque from, dehydration or ODing or, whatever. So
there's a job they had the paramedics at the fire department doing, and they created a special agency just to go out and pick up people off the streets that are out of their own capacities.
Well, they had people that were pitching up tent outside our fire exit, and you could see right through, and they were going to set up shop and start building a house or something. So we called them out, And they were the ACS were the people that talked to them, that were kind to them, and they moved them out. And that did not involve actual officer or a fire truck or an ambulance to handle these people. So, and then the cops are there to, put handcuffs. They don't need to really go to jail. They just need to be taken to a shelter or need help. So to me, as far as the mayor is concerned, he's done something. At least I know one thing that this current mayor has done that's something positive.
So there are 11 people running in this mayoral race? I guess that'll get whittled down to 2, right?
It was 9, and they had then now it's 11. 2 more people jumped into the race, and most of these other people is like, what are they? One's a city council, and all the rest of them are. One's a police officer, the other one's a fire department. But what do you know about running a city? What kind of political background do you have?
So this is a program that they started that you really like. The incumbent mayor.
Right. Mayor Keller. At least he's done something that I know that really solved a lot of the problems here. And I have called these ACS people a lot. We have a lot of people passed out around their neighborhood outside.
Sarah,
so they come in.
This is the problem that I have with it. It does sound like on its face that that's a great program. However, I'm sure the people going out to actually do the pickups are they're hired for an 8-hour day, whether they're picking up people or whether they're doing something or not doing anything, and so at $25 an hour, and I don't know how many of these guys there are, but that's a payroll cost right there, and then they're gonna have administrative costs that's probably whatever the payroll is times 3, and then. And then, who pays for this? It's not, money doesn't just come out of nowhere. So somebody's got to pay for that. And alternatively, I'm sure the job could get done for much less if you just wanted to pay 2 people to put on some kind of official looking uniform. Obviously, they couldn't look too close to a police officer because they don't like it when you do that. But if you just go out there in some kind of official looking uniform, you talk to these people and tell them they're violating ordinance, whatever, and you have a clipboard. For some reason, a clipboard just makes people think that you're very official and they better listen to you. You can get those people to move along without any kind of a fight if you have the correct language skills to do so. And it can be done for much less cost and without stealing from people to fund it.
Well, besides the cost of whatever you're thinking, this is like a needed, necessary service.
I'm telling you, it could exist without stealing.
Wait a minute, what makes it necessary? I mean, I understand it's a service that is, maybe desirable or something like that, but I mean, what's your definition of necessary?
Well, we have shortage of like 300 officers. We don't have enough cops to go out for these calls. Okay. They're not violent. It's just they're just loitering around in places like in front of our fire exit. They're camping out behind
Sarah just doesn't
alleyways.
like how they look. She thinks they ought to get on benefits from the government and live inside of a box like her.
So, anyways, but anyways, that's enough of that. So all I know is it's like my question is that I'm going to have to stay with the incumbent as far as I'm concerned, because I don't know the other 10 or 10 people. I have no idea who they are. I don't know much of their experience, and I don't know what they have done. I don't see nothing they have done. At least with current mayor, I have seen what he's done.
Yeah.
So that's that. But
I mean, how are you supposed to? How are you supposed to see what somebody has done before they've ever been elected, right? Like, I mean,
you can only look at what they've said.
Right. Like, I mean, I get like you want a resume, but I don't know. It's like it seems like you gotta have actually been elected before you're gonna have a resume. And how do you ever get to that point if you've never been elected? Right? It's just I don't know.
Well, the thing is that Mayor Cho, he was one of our state senators actually over the neighborhoods I was living in, and I met him several times in the town hall meetings when he was my state senator that went to Santa Fe in the White House. So then he was involved with many of the issues, and he still is very much involved with the issues as a mayor. So I don't think that other people that are running, I have no clue who they are, you know. And then if they are a police officer or a fireman, what does it have to do with running a city or running a state or running a neighborhood or any of it? So,
well, all right. Couple of things on that. And thanks for the call tonight, Sarah. I think you could pick one of these guys up off the street that's almost ODing, and they'd probably do just as good a job as any one of those 9 people running for mayor, because they're probably not psychopathic, and they probably don't want to be a parasite on their fellow humans. And then the other thing, I've forgotten the other thing. It's too bad, though, that Sarah just can't see a way around getting the things she wants in this world without asking the government to first steal from somebody and then create a program and then fund the program with the plunder.
You know, an experiment I would love to see run is having some area, some country, and have another similar kind of country in terms of population and, other things and social economic status and things of that nature, and have a system of government where you, rather than having people elected, people are picked through a lottery, so some sort of lottery system of the population. And I'm curious how that would do relative to what we have with Western-style democracies today.
That'd be a great experiment to see, and I'm very curious what the results would be.
Right? Because, most people are bad at their job, and they're just like, I don't necessarily know that somebody else in that same position is going to be worse, It could end up being that a random selection of people from the population to lead would end up with better results than,
Yeah, and if if your neighbor gets called up to the White House to do their job for 4 years and then they come home and they've done an awful job, they're gonna have to face the results of a bunch of people who are very upset with them. Whereas the people now, they can behave as badly as they want for as long as they're there, and they're basically immune afterwards. They're just held up as wonderful people. That's always the line, especially when they die. Suddenly they become wonderful people. There's all this stuff you can say about how horrible they were, and then
see, I think one of the things is, like, when you have a random sample, the people who end up in power, so to speak, don't want to be there. Whereas if you elect people, those people have an ulterior motive. Like, they always have an ulterior motive.
Yeah, they signed up for it.
Right. Like, why else would you run for office unless you had an ulterior motive, right? And to get elected, you're not going to be able to say what you think. You got to say what's going to sell you to the population. So I think just a random selection, like a lottery, some sort of lottery, to fill the seats, and then I think if you had enough, seats, and like there wasn't any one, per person effectively in power. So it's sort of like maybe you have a presidency, but it's held, that position's held by 6 people, or something like that, right? And so then they vote on every issue or or every decision.
To me, it would put more of an incentive on doing a good job, and it would give. So there's this phenomenon where people who think are very sure that they're competent in something end up doing a much worse job than other people who feel that they're only semi-competent or totally incompetent.
We've had presidents that, the vice presidents that became president through death after presidents have died, and they've actually done pretty decent job. And like, these are people who literally ended up as a vice presidents, but because they would not be electable, they would not be competition, basically. And so it's like they were explicitly picked because they would be bad candidates.
Yeah, and even those people are politicians. Imagine what you'd get if you got somebody, making the decisions that had no desire for power.
Right, and that's kind of the point. It's like, I mean, if there's not really a difference between somebody who's elected and somebody would be bad at the job, then maybe actually just having people randomly picked might actually result in better outcomes for a population. But we won't know that without more choices and more, more changes and more options in government.
That's right.
It's forms of government.
Give us a call. Tell us what you think about the desire for power being kind of a bad idea to give that job to somebody. Phone number here, 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live.
What do you think the appropriate punishment should be for somebody who rents out a room to somebody else without government permission?
I think it's no more than a cease and desist order.
But if she doesn't cease and desist, then what?
I guess at that point, you put liens on her property.
So that would lead to stealing her home, right? Unless she pays off those liens?
That's right.
Yeah. So you believe that the men and women calling themselves the government should be able to steal someone's home from them because they rented out a room without giving them money first?
If you don't pay your property tax, they put a lien on your house.
I know what they do. I'm asking you if you agree with it.
I mean, the thing is, all she has to do is just not rent the room and obey.
That's right. Just obey. Just bow down and kiss the ring, kiss the boot, and you can die without doing everything you've really ever wanted to do in your whole life.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern at freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer with a look back at some of the week's top stories. China said it is evaluating a U.S. offer for trade talks to reduce tariffs. U.S. President Donald Trump had previously said talks were already underway, something Beijing denied. FSN's Nick Harper reports from Washington.
These are some of the most positive noises so far coming from China, with it saying that it's open to the possibility of talks. Last week, Donald Trump claimed talks were already underway and that he'd spoken to the Chinese leader Xi Jinping. However, his own US trade representative, Jameson Greer, confirmed that talks had not yet begun. Donald Trump maintains there is a very good chance of reaching a deal. As it stands, there is a 145% tariff on all Chinese goods entering the United States.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, who won re-election to officially replace former leader Justin Trudeau, warned that the U.S. president is trying to break Canada. While Carney won the Liberal Party another term in office, it is still early to tell if his party will hold the majority of 172 seats in Parliament. FSN's Kate Fisher has more.
Mark Carney argued that US President Trump had fundamentally changed the world, and he said his proposal to take over Canada is not an idle threat.
As I've been warning for months, America wants our land, our resources, our water, our country. President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never, ever happen.
Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre, who until recently had been expected to win, is now projected to also lose his seat in the legislature.
Israel's Air Force carried out an airstrike on the Syrian capital Damascus overnight, saying it was part of a warning to the new government not to attack the country's Druze community, a minority sect that is an offshoot of Islam with followers in Syria, Lebanon, and Israel. From Tel Aviv, Trent Murray has more.
The IDF said it struck an area adjacent to the presidential palace in Damascus without further details on the target. In a joint statement with his defense minister, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the strike was a clear message to the Syrian regime that Israel will not allow Syrian forces to deploy south of Damascus or pose any threat to the Druze community. It comes after days of clashes between gunmen from the Sunni Muslim and Druze communities, stoking fears of further civil and sectarian violence in Syria after years of civil war, which in recent months has subsided after the fall of the Assad regime. Trent Murray, Tel Aviv.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. Talk radio you control. Give us a call. The phone number here is 603-283-6160. Free Talk Live is brought to you by LibertyMinded.com. Official Free Talk Live gear like t-shirts and hoodies are available at LibertyMinded.com. Plus, you'll find a unique collection of cool and funny Liberty-oriented clothing at LibertyMinded.com. That's LibertyMinded.com. In the studio tonight, it's Stu.
And Mr. Penguin.
And we've got callers on the line, so we're going to go to the phone. We've got Caitlin. Caitlin, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, hey everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
What's on your mind?
Okay, so I'm just tuning in for the first time. I'm sorry I don't have a lot of background, but I just hear you talking about the pendulum swinging and not getting involved in the national elections and all that, and just kind of assuming that it's going to swing the other way. And I just want to just suggest to you that is possible that might not happen. And I think it's really dangerous to not pay attention right now, because there's things happening that are mind-blowing, that never happened before.
Like
and
what?
I mean, we may not have, where they're taking people without providing opportunity to defend themselves and shipping them to basically what was turned out to be extermination camps, because Bukake is saying that you don't even get out. Nobody gets out of these.
Yeah, I mean, I follow where you're going with that, but the problem is that there is a history of this sort of stuff going on. It just the media hasn't reported on it. And that
Abu Ghraib, you mean? Or
well, no, not just that, but I mean, so that was deportations from other countries, but certainly that's kind of a sort of an example, but not quite the same. But no, I mean, people have been deported from the United States long before Trump was in power, that were American citizens. It's just the media didn't make a big deal of it. Yes.
You know what? That's a euphemism. But that's a euphemism. Deporting is a euphemism. I mean, you're taking people and sending them to...
I'm not saying this is something that is good or should be happening, and I absolutely agree with you on the due process thing. But the thing is, our system has a mechanism already built in to solve this problem. It's called the courts, and the courts are making their...
But they decided 9-0.
Yep.
They told Trump 9-0 that he needs to facilitate the return. And he said the other day when he was being interviewed by the Terry guy from ABC, he said, I could do it, but I'm not doing it. So this is a constitutional crisis.
I don't agree with you on this. I don't think it's the constitutional crisis that the left is making it out to be. I definitely would agree that it's a problem that people are not getting due process, and the courts have put a stop to that. And so I don't think this is, as much as I don't like Trump, I think we need to be careful about blowing things out of proportion. Sure, we should be pushing back against Trump, but
Sir, come on. If you're the dude that was just shipped to El Salvador, I don't think you would say it's not a big deal.
I didn't say it wasn't a big deal. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying keeping it in context and yes, you have examples of people who have been deported from the United States that should not have been deported. And yes, Trump is not assisting in getting the guy back, and maybe there should be some consequence to that. Don't get me wrong, but you're not talking about this, mass deportations without without due process.
Not yet.
That's what Trump wants That's what Trump wants. That's not what Trump is getting. And the reason for that is because of the court system. So to call it a constitutional crisis, I think is kind of a left overreacting on stuff, because the left does not like this, does not like the fact that it lost.
Can you answer this to me? There was a 9-0 Supreme Court decision that ordered Trump to facilitate the return of the people who'd been deported without due process.
Sure.
And that has been so far ignored. That's
I don't disagree with you.
Of constitutional crisis.
I don't disagree with you on
agree with me?
I don't disagree with you on that. I think this is. I don't think this is good that it happened, but at the end of the day, there's also another aspect of this, in that to some degree, you can't force somebody to do something, right? Like the courts are not with unlimited power. You can penalize somebody for not doing what they're supposed to do to some degree, but their judges are not, they're not this thing that, if somebody doesn't want to do something, if they don't want to reveal their password or whatever, they cannot be forced to do so by edict of a judge. It's just
wait a minute. When he was ordered by the federal judge not to ship them, by the other federal judge not to ship them over,
Sure.
They ignored that order. I mean, I don't know really doesn't make any sense to me what you're saying. You're saying you cannot order Trump to facilitate the return of these guys. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah.
Even though they did order him, but you're saying they can't do it. They did order him.
No. I'm saying that. I'm saying it would be different if it's different if Trump were to continue to, if Trump's administration continued to deport people in violation of the judge's rules is different than not assisting with getting back somebody that was deported in supposedly an error.
Sir, how is that not defying the court order? There was a court order.
I'm not saying it's not. Yes, I understand I'm not actually saying that I think that it isn't a violation of the court order. What I'm saying is that judges are not. There is a limit to their power, basically, just like there's a limit to Trump's power. And so.
Okay, well, I will tell you that we're living in terror. I serve many refugees, immigrants, and there is not one person that I know in that status who is not living in terror, being afraid that they're going to be shipped to El Salvador. That's what's going on. This is a reign of terror. And so I think, I guess what I started with is, please don't suggest that it's not good to, or not necessary to pay attention or to assume that we're going to have a normal pendulum swing, because it's very possible and will be likely, if people don't pay attention, that we will not swing back. Trump has already promised we're not going to need to have another election. There's full intention to not give up power.
Yeah, I get that. I think there's an exaggeration in what Trump has done, or in practice, and he's not completely ignored the courts. I agree that he is sort of disagreeing with the courts, and he is sort of resisting compliance.
You're right that he's resisting, but I mean he's playing a very strange game, and it's very concerning. I guess I would say that extremely concerning. First of all, I'm horrified. I'm absolutely horrified that there were people that were not given due process, that very possibly could be completely innocent. That are in this hell place. That's
absolutely.
Horrifying. And like you said, it's happened historically in this country, so maybe I shouldn't be as horrified as I am because I'm now more aware of it. But now that I'm aware of it, I really am paying attention, because that is a horrible thing.
I mean, I think I would phrase it like this. In some respect, I think you should be horrified by what the administrations do, but I don't think this is really as new of a problem. We have a history of this kind of stuff happening in the United States, and we should work towards solving these problems. But I think it's kind of disingenuous to bring it up now as if, it's just Trump, and it's not just Trump. It's been going on, and the masses and the media have just been ignoring it, to a large degree.
It might have been going on in the dark. It may have been going on in the dark.
Yeah.
But when it goes on in the light of day for every American citizen to be aware of, it erodes our belief in the basic rights that we think that we have.
Sure, but it was a false belief to begin with. I mean,
but I know, well, it may have been a false belief, but once you start eroding ideals, I think you're taking a slippery slope into chaos and complete loss of order and faith in systems. And basically civilization.
Yeah, I don't think we should have faith in systems. I think that's a mistake, and I think we should be teaching people to be more, be particularly questioning their governments and their leaders. I think the fact that we have these people in power is a problem in the first place. So we need to reduce the ability of people in power to have the powers that they have, and then take control over your own life. By removing these government powers and people from being in power and positions of power. So you can eliminate, Trump is not, in some respects, has not gone far enough in terms of eliminating the Department of Education. I think we should eliminate all government education and schooling. Not that I'm against education. I just don't think anybody should be having taxes taken from them that would otherwise then be going to fund their own kids' education and solve their own problems. And then they would have their own choices on how things were done, as opposed to the government one size fits all, which works really, really, really terribly.
All right, I'd like to address a few things here. It sounds like to me this caller is a little bit worried about the mainstream talking points. Maybe I should say more than worried, terrified. Sounds right.
She should be terrified.
And that's the point.
She should be terrified, but it's not just Trump you should be terrified
That's
of.
what they're trying to do.
Right?
That's what the news is there for. It's there to make you scared, so don't watch it, because all of this is very much scripted. It's all very much under control of people that aren't you and I. We're not going to change that through political means.
But you're saying don't watch. You're saying don't watch the news. I'm watching congressional hearings, C-SPAN. I'm watching what's going on.
I've watched some of those. They're fake. That's Hollywood.
I don't know if fake is the right word, but certainly it's a
no. The people in there. So it's reality TV. Because
reality TV is a good way to phrase it.
They really think that this is all very much real.
They put on a show.
They watch.
These politicians put on a show.
They watched that cartoon back in high school or junior high, whenever they showed it to us with "I'm just a bill on the Capitol steps," and they believed it. They bought that lie. Yep. And it's just not true. That's not the way any of this works. There are some bankers, and they want to get an agenda done, and they pay politicians to make it seem like it's legitimate, and that's the way this goes. So you can sit there and worry about the situation of the world, or you can just change your mind and worry about things you have that are under the domain of your own control.
You are profoundly affected by what's going on, you guys.
Absolutely.
You may say it's theater, but you're profoundly affected. The very food that you eat without regulation, you don't know what you buy in the grocery store.
That's right, and that's why I raised rabbits for 2 years. Do you see what I'm saying? You deal with the things that are under the realm of your control.
And that's not entirely true, right? Like you're assuming that you have no ability to determine what's in your own food, or such things.
I didn't say assume. I did not say assume. I'm just saying that the vast majority of people don't have the resources that you may have if you have a farm.
So
I moved back here from New Orleans.
The answer isn't more resources. The answer is personal responsibility.
Right. There are definitely systems to evaluate, people. I mean, look at eBay, right? Like eBay, and I'm not saying eBay has currently a good system, but they had a system that, at one point it worked pretty well. And you could determine, whether or not you should trust somebody, or you should, the seller was reputable, right? And there could easily be systems of this nature for all sorts of things that was not run by the government, that was not the result of taking money from the population through force, and then, or coercion, and then, redirecting it towards, whoever, is given that position of power to do that. And of course, they're benefiting, and they're doing it for their own personal reasons, not necessarily the reasons of that they're intended to be doing them for, basically.
Okay, you guys, I'm not going to keep. I'm going to stop haggling with you, because you guys have really strong opinions. I respect you. I'm not going to keep haggling with you. I will say I really appreciate whoever was talking about a woman's right to make a choice over her own body. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
We have the right to decide whether we take vaccines. We have the right to decide whether we have abortions. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate that. I will say that I really encourage us, even if it's theatrical, even if it's whatever you guys say it is, if they decide to create a full-on repressive authoritarian regime, we're all going to have to live under it. And
unless we all say no thanks, and then they can't make it work.
No one's showing up. I mean, everyone is passive. Americans have like a third. I think it's a third grade education. You're not, but if the vast majority are passive and they come in with their military,
you are correct about that.
Yeah.
And you are correct about the fact that I will suffer the negative consequences.
That too.
But what can I really do, right? Only the things under my own control.
What you can do right now is get involved and say executive orders to militarize the local police. That's what's going on. They just passed.
They've been doing this for decades.
Yeah.
So let me tell you. Let me tell you a little bit. Let me tell you a little bit about the history. So for decades now, the military has been handing down military vehicles, literally used in war, to our local police forces.
Why do they do?
They have tanks. They're called Bearcats. Bearcats that they're using to ram and destroy people's houses to raids over things that are not violent. They're not significant targets of any kind. They're in many cases innocent people.
All right, but listen, okay, I got it. But why did they then create another executive order just the other day, like 3 days ago? What was the purpose of that?
So first of all, executive orders, they have power only to the extent that they're I believe it's only to the extent that they're in relation to like basically stuff that's coming in or out of the United States, like trade, that kind of thing. A lot of these executive orders they're just going to be, slashed, as soon as they hit the courtroom, right? So like a lot of what Trump's doing is more for show. It's not something he wants to give the appearance of something, but he doesn't actually have the power to do so. There are some things that he does have the power to do, and I'll give you some examples. He does have the power to pardon people. He does have, at least at the federal level, he does have the power to do tariffs and things of that nature. These are things that I believe they're explicitly given to him under the Constitution or something to that effect. So he definitely has those powers. But other things he doesn't have the power to do, and the courts have said that much when these things, especially the things that people are most worried about. So
the short answer on that is the air of legitimacy to make people do stuff. It's not. I mean, they just So he can't just say do this without some fancy magic ceremony where he like writes stuff on a paper and then signs it.
Right.
He does be very official looking, and
he does have the power to do things like imprison people, right? But once it gets to the courts, there's another. How do I say it? There is some amount of like, okay, there's certain lines he can't cross, and if he's crossed them, well, they're not legal, and therefore it'll be stopped at that point. And that's kind of what we're seeing unfold here. And he's just keeps doing all these things that he doesn't really have the power to do, or violate the Constitution, and then they get struck down at the courts. But it is being struck down at the courts. If he goes and he starts doing stuff, more significantly, somehow ignoring the courts completely, in some sort of more serious way, I think there would be a more of a concern. And I think this is, some of the stuff is a potential concern. It's kind of leading us in directions where it could be a concern, but I don't think we're at that point where it's actually a concern, because the courts and what he's doing the courts are striking down what he's doing. So the system is working in a lot of respect. It's just, the left is kind of blowing it out of proportion as if it's not, but it seems to be working to me. If from this perspective, it seems to be working.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the call tonight, Caitlin.
And please do call back. You're a great caller.
Yes. Yep. That was a good call. We're going to next David in Jackson. David, what's on your mind tonight?
What an interesting conversation. Dave Carlson, Jackson, Michigan, of all places, which is known one thing, Cascades, and the birthplace of the Republican Party. I'm not necessarily a Republican, but I tell you what, I tuned you guys in. I said I must chime in.
Yeah.
And you started with the World Economic Forum. Is that officially what it's called?
Yeah, I think so.
I think you might be.
That is an entity.
Might be listening to an older show. I don't think we talked about World Economic Forum tonight, but yeah, that is the thing we've talked about.
Top of your show, I think you did. Wasn't it Klaus? Somebody or
that was last week on Saturday, I believe.
Oh,
we talked about that. Yeah, Klaus Schwab stepped down, and now he's under allegations of misconduct. And the guy who took over is the former CEO of Nestle. He's super evil looking dude, and also has done some very unpopular things regarding food rights and water rights.
Wonder how much taxpayer dollar goes to that program. United States taxpayer dollar.
Did you ask if I pay taxpayer dollars?
No, I'm asking. I wonder how much American taxpayer dollars go to that forum as such. Talk about the depth and the deepness. It's called the depth better of government. It really pisses me off.
As far as I know, World Economic Forum charges membership dues, and they're kind of a self-funded thing. I'm sure you could look into it and see that they've gotten grants from things like Bill Gates, and it used to be called Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Now Melinda doesn't like Bill, I guess. Various NGOs, things like that. Some of it may have been tax money, some of it may have not. By the time it becomes plundered, gets really kind of murky a lot of times. So
that's what I feel, murky. Go ahead.
So, anyways, what did you want to say about the World Economic Forum? Just that you wonder if it's a taxpayer-funded thing?
Yeah, and it seems like it's kind of like United Nations countries, of course, are at war. Recently, Pakistan and India over their disputed territory. How do I ask the proper question for a response? Is it the United States of America responsibility to fund these programs?
No.
that may be against us?
I don't think it's the responsibility of Americans to pay for anything.
No,
it's like why would U.S. government or taxpayers or whatever? I mean, these are things that people should be individually contributing to if they believe in those programs, and those programs show they can evidence those programs are working.
I mean, American tax dollars paid for somebody to think up and write down Operation Northwoods, which was an idea they were going to use to. It was going to be false flag attacks in America. In order to justify war in Cuba. This is an actual document.
Yeah.
Yes, it's an old document from the 60s, but it shows you that what they're willing to do.
Wasn't that attack though even earlier? Or wasn't it even earlier? Wasn't it the 30s or something like that?
It never got approved.
Okay.
But
maybe you're talking about something else, because I think there was something involving Cuba at one point during the American-Spanish Civil War or something, American-Spanish War.
Well, they did the Bay of Pigs invasion after. I think they
no. This would have been a different war. This would have been one where the U.S. blew up its own ship. In order to enter a war.
USS Maine.
Yeah. Maybe, I don't know.
Pretty sure that was
That's
USS
right.
Maine.
That's right.
Yeah, they did blow up.
Well, and I think that's a fact in the history book. Like, we know for sure.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, like it's something that was released, 50 years later, 50 years after the fact or something like that.
Yeah, they claimed they were torpedoed, and then the ship inside was like all blown out and not in.
Yeah.
So it was pretty obvious that it was not that.
It's really amazing to me, you guys, that we still have a military base with a serious prison at Guantanamo Bay. Go ahead.
I don't have any military bases.
Yeah.
No, we have Guantanamo Bay in Cuba.
You might. I don't. I don't have any military bases.
Yeah, he doesn't like the fact that you're using the word "we" because obviously he's not a participant or a voluntary.
I would never be part
participant.
of torture and rendition, as they call it.
I'd also like to exclude myself from that group of "we."
Well, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, at least in my belief, I mean, when you look at the whole world, like you have been talking about for the past hour or two, I've been listening. I just think that, is it the United States of America, or is it New Hampshire, or is it Michigan, where I'm at? You think about the global is it a way of life or a territorial thing? That would be a good question for you guys.
For what motivates us, or?
Yeah.
It's an individual thing for me.
Yeah.
I just want to have the most fulfilling life I can. Seems like I may only get one. I might be reincarnated after this. I don't know. I'm just here as confused as everyone else, and I want to make the most of it.
That's a good answer. Well, I've said for a while to myself and to others at 63, almost 63 years old, there's no doubt that there's a reason that we're here. We just didn't get spit out and cold, tired, and hungry, and good luck to you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the call tonight, David. If you'd like to call and get your thoughts on the air, and I thought that was a pretty good one. Phone number here is 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Hi, I'm Derek J. To me, an activist's calling is to actively work to advance a cause. The cause for which I work is personal freedom. I believe my life is best when I engage in voluntary interactions and self-government. I reject the idea that anyone else has a higher claim to my life or my body than I do. I see people who call themselves the government as a threat to my personal freedom. I realize you may feel differently, but my relationship with the people who call themselves the government is completely involuntary. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com.
Protection.
Eleutheromania. The insatiable desire for freedom.
Filibuster. Police state.
It's the new 3-song heavy metal EP from Captain Kickass. Available now on your favorite music app or get it directly from CaptainKickass.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer with a look back at some of the week's top stories. China said it is evaluating a U.S. offer for trade talks to reduce tariffs. U.S. President Donald Trump had previously said talks were already underway, something Beijing denied. FSN's Nick Harper reports from Washington.
These are some of the most positive noises so far coming from China, with it saying that it's open to the possibility of talks. Last week, Donald Trump claimed talks were already underway and that he'd spoken to the Chinese leader Xi Jinping. However, his own US trade representative, Jameson Greer, confirmed that talks had not yet begun. Donald Trump maintains there is a very good chance of reaching a deal. As it stands, there is a 145% tariff on all Chinese goods entering the United States. I'm Nick Harper in Washington.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, who won re-election to officially replace former leader Justin Trudeau, warned that the U.S. president is trying to break Canada. While Carney won the Liberal Party another term in office, it is still early to tell if his party will hold the majority of 172 seats in Parliament. FSN's Kate Fisher has more.
Mark Carney argued that US President Trump had fundamentally changed the world, and he said his proposal to take over Canada is not an idle threat.
As I've been warning for months, America wants our land, our resources, our water, our country. President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never, ever happen.
Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre, who until recently had been expected to win, is now projected to also lose his seat in the legislature. Kate Fisher, Washington.
Israel's Air Force carried out an airstrike on the Syrian capital Damascus overnight, saying it was part of a warning to the new government not to attack the country's Druze community, a minority sect that is an offshoot of Islam with followers in Syria, Lebanon, and Israel. From Tel Aviv, Trent Murray has more.
The IDF said it struck an area adjacent to the presidential palace in Damascus without further details on the target. In a joint statement with his defense minister, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the strike was a clear message to the Syrian regime that Israel will not allow Syrian forces to deploy south of Damascus or pose any threat to the Druze community. It comes after days of clashes between gunmen from the Sunni Muslim and Druze communities, stoking fears of further civil and sectarian violence in Syria after years of civil war, which in recent months has subsided after the fall of the Assad regime. Trent Murray, Tel Aviv.
The Pakistani government has hiked security measures in Pakistan-administered Kashmir. This follows accusations from India blaming Pakistan for a terror attack in Indian-administered Kashmir last week that killed 26 people, a charge which Islamabad denies. FSN's Hira Mustafa reports from Islamabad.
Pakistani authorities have restricted tourist access to sensitive areas and popular destinations in the Kashmir region. The government has also mandated a 10-day closure for all religious seminaries in the area. Pakistan has already announced the daily closure of airspaces over its two largest cities, Karachi and Lahore, for 8 hours each day throughout May. The United States is encouraging both Islamabad and New Delhi to dial back tensions and try to resolve the standoff through diplomacy. Hira Mustafa, Islamabad.
The U.S. and Ukraine signed a long-awaited minerals deal giving Washington access to Kyiv's rare earth minerals. Under the U.S.-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund, Kyiv will retain full control over its natural resources. The U.S. economy shrank in the first 3 months of the year, fueling fears of a looming recession amid an ongoing trade war. FSN's Mitch McCann reports.
Gross domestic product, which measures the monetary value of goods and services produced during a certain time period, decreased in the United States during the first 3 months of the year by 0.3%, according to a report from the U.S. Commerce Department. The figure represents the first contraction in the U.S. economy in 3 years and covers the period before the highest tariffs were implemented in early April. It's also a notable turnaround from the 2.4% growth recorded during the final months of last year. Part of the reason for the contraction is due to a significant increase in imports, soaring 41% as businesses stockpile goods to beat the tariffs.
Those were some of the week's top stories.
A majority of Americans are pointing to Friday's tragedy as a clear call for major reforms in everything, or literally anything at all that might prevent acts of horrifying, senseless violence. According to a recent ONN poll, the nation is united in saying that the key to preventing future tragedies is a drastic change in gun control, mental health care, school security, media coverage, violent entertainment, the fragility of the human condition, and really so many other things we probably haven't even thought of yet. Jesus. The Randolph Center for Public Health and Safety also released a statement saying, quote, "If you look at statistics regarding gun violence in the United States, you'll see the recent shooting is a clear cry for any thing at all to please be different." In Washington, lawmakers have reached a bipartisan agreement that the U.S. desperately needs tighter firearm restrictions or looser firearm restrictions, or honestly, whatever option just makes these things stop. Do that one.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live, talk radio you control. The phone number here is 603-283-6160. You're welcome to call and talk about whatever you'd like to within the bounds of the FCC's constrictions that they put on our language. Some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 per month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it will cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you're feeling so inspired. You'll get a special membership badge that is visible in the Odyssey chat room, and there is a members-only chat. This new subscription method is a great way to decentralize our direct listener support away from just Patreon and also support a libertarian-run business, Odyssey. Please visit video.freetalklive.com and click join to subscribe to our Odyssey channel and help support spreading our message around the planet. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click join today. In the studio tonight, it's Stu.
And Mr. Penguin.
And Mr. Penguin brought in a story that he'd like to share with us.
I did. So the story, the title of the story, this is from the Atlantic, and the title of the story is and I have no idea if I'm pronouncing this right, but it's Panopticon.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So we got a story here about the surveillance state, basically. So I'm going to get right into it, and we can talk about this a little bit. So if you were tasked with building a panopticon, your design might look a lot like the information stores of the U.S. federal government, a collection of large, complex agencies, each making use of enormous volumes of data provided by or collected from citizens. The federal government is a veritable cosmos of information made up of constellations of databases. Sounds about right. The IRS gathers comprehensive financial and employment information from every taxpayer. The Department of Labor maintains the National Framework or Jobs Program system, which collects the personal information of many workers. The Department of Homeland Security amasses data about the movements of every person who travels by air commercially. This is really disturbing. I wonder how many people actually even knew this. But your travel is being monitored by the feds, basically, or crosses the nation's borders. The Drug Enforcement Administration tracks license plate scanners. License plates scanned on American roads. That's another one. I wonder what percentage of Americans realize that their license plate is being constantly scanned. They're being monitored. Let's see here.
Yeah, I always figured when, as soon as I learned that you couldn't, even if you turned off location services on your smartphone, it still somehow knows exactly where you are. Once I learned that was the case, I figured they were just tracking and logging. Whether there's somebody there actually viewing the information is irrelevant. It's being captured and stored somewhere.
Yeah, so basically each of the cell phone towers is logging, the fact that you connected to it, basically. And it doesn't tell them exactly where you are, but you're going to have to be within a certain distance of the tower, basically.
I would imagine that it goes further than that, and they have the actual GPS location of your phone at all times, and those locations are probably logged and updated every, 10 seconds, or at least every 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, there's two different methods of them obtaining your location. One is through your phone's GPS, and another one is through triangulation. So if you're connecting to 3 towers, they can triangulate you.
That's how they used to do it on phones that didn't have location, didn't have GPS capability.
Yeah, and this was actually mandated in the 90s, and under the what's the word I'm looking for? The presumption or the assumption or the premise, I guess, based on that premise of safety. And it had to do with 911. Somebody calling 911 from a cell phone, well, we have to know where you are, right? Like, as if most people can't just say, hey, I am at such and such location, or, something like that. And it wasn't like, it could have been that, like, okay, well, if you want to give them your location, you could press a button on your phone or whatever and give them, no. Everybody. They just basically forced it across the board that everybody has to constantly reveal their very precise location, to the government.
Yep.
So, administration tracks license plates scanned on American roads, and that's only a minuscule sampling. More obscure agencies, such as the recently gutted Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, keep records of corporate trade secrets, credit reports, mortgage information, and other sensitive data, including lists of people who have fallen on financial hardship. A fragile combination of decades-old laws, norms, and jungly bureaucracy has so far prevented repositories such as these from assembling into a centralized American surveillance state. But yeah, I mean, this is, I can't tell you how much I despise this, surveillance state, and people they don't seem to have any problems with it. I'm amazed that, like, I was objecting to there's something called Easy Pass, which is basically like a means of paying your bill when you go through tolls before like decades ago, many decades ago. And it's like it's so easy to see what comes next. And now we're at a point where they track you everywhere. It's like every road has a toll now, and it's
previously that was like, you get a little transponder and put it in your car, and it could communicate. Now that's built into your car.
Yeah, right. Almost. But yeah, and it kind of is built into the car in the sense that now they just use the license plate. And it's like, it's none of their business where I go or what I do. So, and I shouldn't be subject to that, but because, they say that it's because politicians don't want to raise taxes through other means, but that's what it is. It's what they do. It's a tax. It's a tax, and it's not just a tax. It's also a system of surveillance so that they can, tell if you're doing something they don't like, they don't want you doing or whatever. It doesn't mean it's illegal. It just means they don't like it. You vote for the wrong politician, and a different administration comes into power, well, they might target you. But and this is things that they are actually doing. Like, the conservatives were targeted, through the IRS. I don't remember how long ago this was, but maybe within the last decade. And what is the right doing now? The right's doing the same thing. It's like, it's maybe not with the IRS, but they're doing it through other means and targeting, like, for example, the immigrants, right? It's like, or people who are here legally, and it's like, this is what we get for, accepting this kind of nonsense.
That's right. And I, just for a little background information, for any listeners that aren't aware or familiar with the term panopticon, this term dates back to the late 1700s, where it was popularized by Lord Jeremy Bentham. The idea is a prison structure with a high tower in the center, so that only one or just a very few guards can watch all of the prisoners at once, and this having an effect of self-policing, because none of the prisoners knew if they were being watched at any given moment, so they would just always act as if they were being watched. And so that's the idea of the panopticon. It's a self-policing incentive.
So let's see here. But that appears to be changing. Since Donald Trump's second inauguration, Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency have systematically gained access to sensitive data across the federal government, and in ways that people in several agencies have described to us as both dangerous and disturbing. And again, I want to emphasize that this is not something that Donald Trump has enabled. This is something that the left and the right has been enabling through, since at least the 1930s, in terms of increasing the number of government programs. The government programs are how they get this data. So if we hadn't created all of, this huge bureaucracy, Trump could never do any of these things that he's doing.
Right. The official government stance on all of this stuff that, requires them to keep you safe should have been, it's none of my business. So
yep.
I'm not going to deal with it.
The humorous thing about this too is that Trump is trying to defund these programs that are collecting this data. So, it's like, yes, he's doing things that are bad, but he's also in some respect actually doing some things that, now the question is any of what he's doing going to have any kind of long-term effect? And I'm skeptical, because I'm pretty confident when the Democrats come into power or the next Republican comes into power, they're just going to re-implement all of this stuff. Maybe there's going to be some economic cost to, because it's going to cost us even more money now, because they, have to, rehire people. And when you rehire somebody, now you have to pay them more because, otherwise, why would they come back? Right.
Yeah. Well, I have a few concerns about the people he's hanging out with, such as Peter Thiel and Elon Musk. Just, some of their background.
Yeah, certainly not friends of mine either, but
yeah, they certainly set around himself plenty of people that are interested in very authoritarian approaches to things.
Despite Dodge's stated mission, little efficiency seems to have been achieved. Efficiency. It's an interesting choice of word. I don't think it's an accurate word to describe what he's sort of trying to do. I think it's more like defunding these programs is more along what he's trying to do, but he can't really defund them, so he's cutting the budgets. And really they shouldn't be just cut; they should be eliminated in most of these cases. And it's not that these government programs. How do I say this? It's not that the things that they're meant to be doing are always terrible, but the results is they're very inefficiently doing those things. And we're paying tons of money in it, and it should be these things should generally be things that people voluntarily participate in through other means. It's sort of like insurance, the government shouldn't have its hands in insurance, but then again, it shouldn't be regulating it either. So, and you should then be evaluating, well, does this insurance carrier, does this carrier pay out? And if they don't go using that carrier.
Government meddling in the insurance industry is one of the most offensive and egregious things government has ever done.
Oh yeah, and if you actually start looking at how bad, everybody knows insurance is terrible, right? But it's much worse than people I think realize. So like if you look at let's take a look at health insurance for a moment. The cost of health insurance is, if you had a non-profit, and entertainingly we actually have this. There's about 5 to 7 they don't call it insurance, but basically non-insurance. And I'm not suggesting everybody go out and subscribe to this, but they're I think it's like something like pre-1950s. You could set up some sort of religious organization to basically take care of your members, and the members would pay into a pool. And then that pool would pay out, so kind of like insurance, right? Except I think you get reimbursed for it, as opposed to with insurance, the insurance carrier pays directly, right? Anyway, so that's about half the cost of insurance today. So and again, basically they when they regulated and I don't know, at some point when they started regulating the stuff more, they basically said, okay, only those religious entities that existed with these programs prior to 1950 could continue to run them, but you couldn't set up a new program like that. And so all of these are religious based entities that basically do this. And the regulated insurance industry has a cost, like I was saying, is about twice as much. So it just seems insane to me. And that's all due to the regulation, basically.
Yeah, it's out of control, and it would never have gotten to this point without,
Yeah. And it's not just, and you have to remember, it's not just the insurance costs that you're paying twice as much for, but it's also other regulations that cause inefficiencies, which increase the costs of, hospitals and, drugs and things like that as well.
And it's not to mention all the bureaucrats it takes to write all these rules down and make sure they happen.
Right. Despite Dodge's stated mission, little efficiency seems to have been achieved. Now, a new phase of Trump's project is underway. Not only are individual agencies being breached, but the information they hold is being pulled together. The question is why? Isn't it obvious? They want to know everything you're doing at every point of the day, and they want to be able to penalize people that are doing things that they don't like, and that things they don't like, you're voting for the wrong candidate, right? And what does the administration intend to do with it? Let's see here. In March, President Trump issued an executive order aiming to eliminate the data silos that keep everything separate. Historically, much of the data collected by the government had been heavily compartmentalized and secured. Even for those legally authorized to see sensitive data. Requesting access for use by another government agency is typically a painful process that requires justifying what you need, why you need it, and proving that it is used for those purposes only. Not so under Trump. This is a perilous moment. Rapid technological advances over the past 2 decades have made data shedding ubiquitous, whether it comes from the devices everyone carries or the platforms we use to communicate with the world. As a society, we produce the unfathomable quantities of information, and that information is easier to collect than ever before. Yeah, and the amazing thing is people they voluntarily join in on this stuff, right? Most people don't take any steps to protect themselves when it comes to buying a phone, like a smartphone or something like that, or a cell phone. They don't take any steps to protect themselves from the surveillance state in terms of most people are literally joining and getting EasyPass and similar tracking devices for their vehicles just because it's easier to pay a bill. That boggles my mind. no, people don't do anything, or I don't know. It's like, I don't know if people are just ignorant or arrogant or what the story is.
So I can give somewhat of an answer to that. I don't take all the precautions that I know are available to me in this realm.
I mean, nobody does, but go ahead, keep going.
Right, to do so would make my life unenjoyable.
It would be, I mean, it would be a full-time job.
So,
I mean, I literally work in an industry to try and solve these problems, and like, it's a full-time job. I'm telling you, and you still won't achieve perfection.
Right. I kind of look at it as striking a balance. Some things, like obviously the in-home spy devices, like the Alexa and stuff like that. They're obviously spy devices,
right?
And they're in your home, and they're going to listen to and record everything you say, even if you didn't use the trigger word.
Your television, if it's got a microphone in it, same thing. If you connect your television to the internet, same thing.
Right.
If you have
my point.
Alexa, same
cell
thing.
Phone, same thing.
Yep.
And everybody's got a cell phone on them all the time.
What's Apple's Siri? Same thing. Yep.
So unless you're willing to like Faraday bag all of your devices that have Bluetooth or internet capability all the time in your home, then there's no point in avoiding one of these spy devices that could offer you some convenience when you already have a spy device in your pocket. It just doesn't make any sense to reject the one when you've already got the other.
Yeah, I don't think that's. I think that's probably some sort of fallacy. I guess is the way to phrase that. In that you're not, the amount of data that's being collected on you is likely going to be increased the more of these types of devices that you've got. So I don't necessarily know.
That may be true.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know that I would say that it's kind of a futile effort. I think it's not really that futile of an effort. In that there are some basic things that you can do that's not really that difficult. Like for your phone, for example, nothing says you have to be connected to the cellular tower 24/7. I mean, you can turn it on when you want to make a call or receive a call, I guess. You can, well,
a lot of these phones still gather and store a minimal amount of data, even when they're quote unquote off. That's why you have non-removable batteries in most of the phones now.
Well,
so unless you're willing to go to the point of a Faraday bag, which I actually do have one.
I mean, I'm not sure where you heard that one. I mean, it is an interesting question as to why do we have why is the battery integrated? And in theory, the battery is integrated because it makes them more waterproof or water resistant. But yeah, I mean, is there an ulterior motive there? It could be. Yeah, I mean, but it is the case that like, and I think you're not entirely wrong, like in that, your typical Android or your iPhone is doing a lot of malicious stuff on you, right? Like, but it's kind of at multiple levels, right? It's not at just one level. Some of it, is in the baseband firmware on your phone,
right.
Which is independent of the
manufacturer. A lot of it is
manufacturer.
Definitely what type of phone you have. For example, I've always just used Apple, which is it's not the best security choice as far as that goes. Depending on it's not the best personal security choice. They are very good with security as, a company standard in securing all their own stuff, but they're not interested in my security, and I know that. I asked the internet the question. It tells me that yes, phones can continue to gather data even when they're turned off.
Okay.
And it is largely dependent on what type of phone and stuff like that. But for example, iPhones can still you can still use the Track My Phone app when the phone's off.
Right. Okay, so there is okay. So I know what I do understand what they're referencing. Okay, so there are enclaves is I think the technical term that you would use. In terms of maybe it's not an enclave. No, enclave is not really the right word. There's basically a it's weird, but basically computers can have computers in themselves, basically like separate from themselves that then can be used to control the main computer. And this is in all sorts of different types of devices. Like for example, in the server world, and the hosting world, in the co-location data center world, right, where all your data lives. Every single one of them has something called, I think it's BCM controller, which basically allows a system administrator to remotely take control of the computer. So they can turn the computer off, they can turn it back on remotely. And the phones, they have something called a baseband. I think it's a baseband controller. I think it might be baseband controller. It's basically modem firmware that allows the phone to make and receive calls. And now I don't know the details specifically with like Apple as your example. I don't know if they're using that or if it's something separate from that. But yeah, I mean there's definitely ways to design phones and devices, as you're saying. So.
Yep. What do you think about America's panopticon and the increasing surveillance state? Give us a call. Let us know what you think. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Rising fees have made Bitcoin useless for purchases. But Dash continues to have fees less than 1 cent per transaction, and its features ensure Dash is undefeated as the most useful cryptocurrency in the marketplace. From a technical standpoint, Dash transactions are irreversible, and its network is protected from 51% attacks by their Chainlocks technology. There's no need to wait for a confirmation before considering a Dash transaction complete, so it's great for merchants. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at Dash.org. Big thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit Dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer with a look back at some of the week's top stories. China said it is evaluating a U.S. offer for trade talks to reduce tariffs. U.S. President Donald Trump had previously said talks were already underway, something Beijing denied. FSN's Nick Harper reports from Washington.
These are some of the most positive noises so far coming from China, with it saying that it's open to the possibility of talks. Last week, Donald Trump claimed talks were already underway and that he'd spoken to the Chinese leader Xi Jinping. However, his own US trade representative, Jameson Greer, confirmed that talks had not yet begun. Donald Trump maintains there is a very good chance of reaching a deal. As it stands, there is a 145% tariff on all Chinese goods entering the United States.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, who won re-election to officially replace former leader Justin Trudeau, warned that the U.S. president is trying to break Canada. While Carney won the Liberal Party another term in office, it is still early to tell if his party will hold the majority of 172 seats in Parliament. FSN's Kate Fisher has more.
Mark Carney argued that US President Trump had fundamentally changed the world, and he said his proposal to take over Canada is not an idle threat.
As I've been warning for months, America wants our land, our resources, our water, our country. President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never, ever happen.
Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre, who until recently had been expected to win, is now projected to also lose his seat in the legislature.
Israel's Air Force carried out an airstrike on the Syrian capital Damascus overnight, saying it was part of a warning to the new government not to attack the country's Druze community, a minority sect that is an offshoot of Islam with followers in Syria, Lebanon, and Israel. From Tel Aviv, Trent Murray has more.
The IDF said it struck an area adjacent to the presidential palace in Damascus without further details on the target. In a joint statement with his defense minister, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the strike was a clear message to the Syrian regime that Israel will not allow Syrian forces to deploy south of Damascus or pose any threat to the Druze community. It comes after days of clashes between gunmen from the Sunni Muslim and Druze communities, stoking fears of further civil and sectarian violence in Syria after years of civil war, which in recent months has subsided after the fall of the Assad regime. Trent Murray, Tel Aviv.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. Talk radio you control. We're in the final segment of tonight's show. In the studio tonight, it's Stu.
And Mr. Penguin.
And currently we are going to go to the phones. We've got David in New Mexico. David, what's on your mind?
Money, freedom, law. So maybe I had my own thing, but since you're talking about what you're talking about, so how about start with fiat? So first of all, what is the definition that you would give for fiat? You can look it up if you want, or
by decree.
Right up. Pardon?
By decree. Decree.
Well, I'm sorry. Fiat currency.
Yeah, it's valuable because I said so. That's how I would define it.
Okay, well, let's explore that then. So the U.S. dollar, people take it here in the country and elsewhere around the world, right? Or at least they have.
Yep.
Okay, so why do they take it?
Because the United States government said it's valuable.
There's kind of a few different reasons that's people take it, right? Like, one of them is that it is one of the more stable currencies. And many countries have less stable currencies.
I agree with you, Chris.
Yeah.
I agree with you. But to keep it simple, let's since I agree with you on that point, and that's a solid point, let's explore that. Can you please say that first part again? They take it. People around the world take it because it's you said stable currency.
It's more stable relative to other government currencies or other fiat currencies, meaning government currencies, basically.
Got it. Okay. And I'm agreeing with you. I'm not arguing with you. So that is a value, right?
Yeah, but I think
you're.
I suspect you're going to go in a direction that makes it. The problem is that, I know where you're going with this, and yes, that can potentially be a value, and certainly a decline would be not optimal. But the reality is, the U.S. dollar, for example, is in constant decline. So while we say it's stable, it's not really stable. It's in decline, but it's in a lesser rate of decline than other government fiat currencies.
Right, and so now, but we're expanding. I want to resist expanding the facts that we're providing, and stick with the first issue. The first point was that you made is that it's more stable than other fiat. And then then when you hit the ball back to me, then I just added, hitting it back to you with, is that not a value? Without going into the fact that the value does decline over time, inflation, deflation, whatever, is it not a value that the U.S. dollar was relatively more stable than other choices that these people may have had?
Many individuals in the marketplace have assigned their value to a stable currency.
I mean, I dislike the use of the word stable because it's sort of not an accurate description of what's going on here. But
get out the thesaurus and give me a different word for something that indicates the same idea.
Lesser decline.
That's fine. We can use that. So the lesser decline.
Yep.
Which is actually, and for the record, lesser decline does not completely replace stability, because stability doesn't really care whether there's a decline or an increase. Stability means that, to make it short, is the same, that it stays closest to the same.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Or, and actually that's not even true, because if there is a controlled increase in value or a steady decrease in value, that is also stability. It declines at 2
Yeah.
3,
Yeah, no, I think you're making actually a pretty good point here. So keep going.
No, well, actually, you jump on it. I talked for a while, so you talked for a while. So what do you think?
I'm waiting for you. I'm waiting for you to say what I'll get to a part where I'll disagree, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to disagree with you at some point here. But keep going.
So I can get there quickly for you.
Sorry.
I'll be honest. If it's something that would be something that I would have presented in this argument, we'll call it, then I'll tell you whether you're accurate or not. I won't cheat you.
I'm not sure yet what you're.
Let's just keep going. So keep going with what your thought.
Well, okay. So, like I said, I made a statement. So respond to that, and that'll cue me to have something else to say. So you said I made a good point about a steady, a 2 to 3% devaluation in the dollar because of inflation. If it's always between the rails of 2 and 3%,
constant decline.
Out, that's stability. That's a stable decline.
The problem is it's not really consistently 2 to 3%. We've seen 18%. Okay, keep going.
You're correct. You're correct. I agree with you. Let me tighten up my statement.
Yeah.
And I believe this is actually the Fed's goal, is to keep, they're charged. They have like 2 things that they're charged with doing, and one of them is to keep inflation between 2 and 3%.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and the system gets beaten up, and they're not always within the rails. Sometimes they go off the rails, and we get Jimmy Carter inflation or whomever. Okay,
sure.
So go ahead.
Sure, and that's just the U.S. we're talking about. I mean, if you look at Canada, I don't even remember over what 4 years it was, but they had like 40%. 40% was lost. Well, it was a 40% decline over like 4 years or something like that. So I guess that would average out to maybe like 10% a year. Although I don't know if that's perfectly accurate because of the. But anyway, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be accurate. We all know that there has been inflation up to, like Jimmy Carter, what was that, 15%, 18%? Across the board.
Yeah.
So, we know that happens, so we don't need to prove that it happens, because we all agree.
Okay, so we're in agreement so far. So where are we going with this?
Yeah, what's the point?
Okay, well, let me decide. So if we agree on that part, then let's see. So if a fiat currency is an engineered product simply so that we have something to pass back and forth instead of barrels of whiskey or pickles or whatever, then if it's an engineered thing and let's just say that the best thing that they'd come up with is something that loses its value by 2 to 3% per year, and it's
well, they call that a feature.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a feature. Yeah, and it is. It's a feature. I believe. Okay, so here's a belief that I hold, and I may not be a genius. Every other economist, I'm not an economist, might have already stated this publicly a million times, and that is that I think that the design of fiat is, simply to have a tool to pass wealth back and forth. And you're not supposed to stay invested in the dollar. You had that conversation earlier in the program.
Yeah.
You're supposed to transmit it and then convert it to something else.
Yeah, right.
And I think Skeeter said that as well.
I don't know if Skeeter said that. I said that though.
Okay, well, who doesn't? I shouldn't have said that. Whoever said it, I should have stuck with it. It was said earlier in the program.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that's an assertion. So what do you think of? Apparently, you agree with that assertion.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then there's defining fiat, or the goal or the job of the Fed, and I think they stated in their own words. One thing that they try to do is keep that inflation in check, and then there was another thing, two prongs of what their main focus is. Do you remember what the other prong is? Oh, I think I know.
Yeah, there is 2 things that they. At the moment I'm not sure, but if you said it, I'll tell you if you're right, because I'll know it when you say it.
Is it to keep the system liquid so that there is a supply of money available so that it can continue to move, as opposed to having something clogged up and then people get nervous and go take all their money out of the bank?
Yeah, you might be onto something there. Yeah, something along those. It might be something along those lines. You're doing a terrible job at describing it, but yeah, I think you're kind of on the right track.
I flew jets for a living.
Yeah.
I wasn't a banker.
Yeah, no, I get it. Neither am I. So a totally, man, you're good enough for me. Let's keep going. What else?
Okay, so and then back to the value. We started the conversation with I said use the word stability, and asking if that stability was a value, which would then support my argument that the U.S. dollar has a value, and it's actually not so far different than crypto, for instance, because it provides a mechanism to transmit a system that
sure.
Bitcoin. Well,
it's a means of transacting business. It's used in the exchange of value.
Right. Okay. So it has a value from its utility.
Yeah.
Then back in the old days, theoretically, with a gold-backed dollar, the dollar was actually backed by real money, and now we know that it isn't.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of inflation because gold is still worth the same, but the dollar is worth like 1% of what it was when we first created a gold-backed dollar, right?
Right.
Okay. And let's see. I was driving at a point. Let me see if I can get my train of thought back again. And if you have something you want to say, just say it while I'm thinking. Go ahead.
I don't really have anything to say other than I think we're pretty much in agreement for up to this point.
Okay. So the U.S. dollar is a fiat issued by the United States as opposed to some other country.
Right.
And the United States, at least that used to be, and we'll just presume that it still is very productive and industrious, notwithstanding the fact that true industry has been shipped overseas, but the American people are still productive.
Sure.
Okay. And the U.S. dollar fiat is backed by the people that are productive. And on top of that, we have land and we have mineral resources.
Okay.
We have industrious people, and this is our money. And the world, so my allegation is that the world sees us as what I just described, and don't expect the American people to be unwealthy anytime in the near future, and the Americans are going to still keep using their money. So it's probably a pretty good bet then. What do you think of that as supporting the allegation that the U.S. dollar has value?
I mean, it's losing its value, I think, is sort of the.
We covered that. You want to go back? You want to go back to that discussion?
I'm sorry. Why are you? I thought we were in agreement on this. So what exactly was the problem with saying it's losing its value? It's losing its utility.
Losing its value. The problem with that is, and yes, we were previously in agreement, and I believe that we still are. And what I'm saying, my allegation is that the goal of the people that build the money and deploy the money, the goal is 2 to 3% inflation.
Sure.
And that this is a fiat currency, and this is how we run the fiat currency system. And we don't intend for you to just stack up millions and millions and tens of millions and hundreds of millions of U.S. dollars. But one of the points of having a fiat that constantly loses 2 to 3% is incentive for you to go do something with that money instead of letting it sit in a big pile like what Scrooge McDuck or whatever it is.
Sure.
Right, and that's based on the assumption that saving is not good for the economy, which is
so. I guess I'm still not sure I'm following you. What you're getting at here?
The allegation that my last bit of verbiage was intended to support was that the loss of 2 to 3% of the value of the money each year is not a negative. It's a necessary.
Oh, I see what you're saying. It pushes that particular agenda of getting people to spend their dollars. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't dispute that. That is the stated goal. Sure.
Okay. And
the actual goal.
Yeah.
The actual goal of a fiat currency is for bankers to be able to siphon the wealth from the masses of any given society.
Well, I mean, the whole reason for this is the result of I forget which war it is, but there was a war, and when they went off of the gold standard, that they were using that to continue funding the war after they ran out of money. So I mean, this is like kind of Bitcoin 101 kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. Well, true. I mean, it's been stated over and over again by people that claim to be experts is that you can't run the society that we have with just being locked to a gold standard.
Sure. That's one of the things they're saying. But that's not the reason we got off of it, because if it like, I mean, I get that's kind of the excuse for fiat, but like, that's not really what happened. And basically the U.S. ran out of money and such that they decided to start siphoning off of, the dollar and, off of their new currency, which was no longer pegged to gold anymore. So they could then fund the war through that 2 to 3%.
And if you go back to the next
it's basically a tax on the world.
The next previous big change before that was it was basically a consolidation of the competition within banking, which we now call the Federal Reserve. And that happened before U.S. entry into World War I. It was just a thing the bankers wanted to get done. And once they got it done, they realized, hey, now we could fund serious war efforts.
Yeah. I realize I'm really curious where we're going with this because we only have another 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, well, where we're going with that, there is no. I have no ultimate destination. I'm just exploring as we go along.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't think that it gets explored in this detail that often.
Oh no, definitely not. Yeah, you definitely need knowledgeable people about the history and everything else in order to explore it. And I love to use the word dirty fiat just because it's like people don't really understand, and it kind of starts conversations about like, well, what is fiat and why do you call it dirty and all these things, and it's like so
a negative of the fiat, I mean, and I probably won't get any opposition for wanting to discuss the negatives of it. Once again, I don't know anything. I just know what I think I see, and I may not even be seeing it properly. But we've already alluded to this for instance, the government going to fiat because they couldn't afford to kill people in sufficient quantities if they were still on the gold standard.
Sure.
And so I believe that allegation. If that's the allegation that the evil powers that be weren't able to kill enough people on gold standard, and we need to go off the gold standard so we can kill more people, then I buy into that argument. But
it's a moral religious argument in some respects. It's one of these things that it's the reason I am not a fan of using dirty fiat. I avoid it when I can, and I avoid the plastic, because they take another 2 to 3%, and really it's more than that. But whenever you swipe a card, so like there's all sorts of different ways that they're basically getting at your value.
Right. Yeah. And that's one. You just said something new, but since you said the value again, I was about to go into this anyway. And so they tax us, right? They make us pay a tax on this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah, there's multiple taxes basically in here, and people don't realize how much they're losing of every dollar that they basically bring in. They're losing a big chunk of it.
Right. And then most people are familiar with the allegation that the inflation is a tax.
Sure.
Right. And if they, and now we're getting beyond what I even have a grasp of well enough in order to regurgitate it, but along the lines of if they need you to be poorer They can, whether they do quantitative easing and quantitative tightening, and they induce inflation. So if they want to make you 30% poorer this year, they can do whatever they need to do to cause 30% inflation this year.
Generally speaking, yes, they could do that.
Yeah, I mean, I have to review my knowledge base on some of these aspects and how these different schemes work to manipulate the money supply and everything else. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely different things. There's all sorts of different. That's the terrible thing about government. They have all sorts of sneaky ways of getting at your money, and you don't even realize how much you're losing. Most of your wealth is lost through these sneaky scams and ways of kind of like weaseling out of calling it a tax. So they don't want to call it a tax, but it's a tax. It's just a different form of tax.
Terminology all the time, and they make it so convoluted that the average person has no chance of actually navigating what they're saying. Like what did you say? Or like quantitative easing and quantitative restriction. That's these are new terms for inflation and deflation. It's the same thing. They just called it a different thing in order to confuse people. So they look somewhere else.
They and it's crazy. Like if you start looking at it, it's like you for every dollar you bring in, like 97% of it really ultimately ends up in government's hands. It's crazy, but it's something along those lines. And some of this is like because of things like tariffs, right? Some of it's because the government has taken out a percentage of it from your paycheck that you don't even know about. Another percentage of it you'll see on your pay stub, maybe if you bother to look at it. Another percentage of it comes out through maybe your rent. Or through your property taxes that you pay. Another percent of it, comes out through, I don't even know. Like there's so many different forms of like hidden tax. I couldn't even begin to, list them all. But there's like things like gas taxes, and maybe you could say gas tax is totally fine because it goes for the roads or whatever that you're using. Okay.
The roads are terrible. So
well, that might be. But the point that I'm making is simply that they have a lot of hidden taxes. Why are you paying a toll if your gas taxes are supposed to go to the roads, right? Like, I mean, or registration fees, another great hidden tax, right? It's like, I don't know what we're paying, but a couple $100 a year for your, maybe your vehicle registration if you have an older vehicle, maybe $600, $700, $800 a year if it's a newer vehicle. These are, they call them fees, but they're taxes.
Yep. Yeah, and when they do things like a 2% inflation as a standard, and they call that a good thing to disincentivize saving, that's because they hate the idea of private capital formation, where somebody might start a business from just the meager things they already have around them and turn that into some real capital, and then use that to facilitate their ideas and wants in the world, instead of the bankers handing you out a loan so that you can get your things done, and then you're beholden to them and make sure that all of their wants and ideas are enacted.
I was going to say that a few moments ago, but before I do that, let me ask you: did something happen to your YouTube feed in the last hour or so?
I'm not.
Were we suspended again? They like to suspend us haphazardly.
Something weird happened, and if you don't know what it is, then we don't need to waste time talking about it.
No.
Yes, at least on my end, something happened.
Yeah, we can look into it later.
Yeah. Who knows? Thanks for letting us know.
Yeah, but I think it is the goal, using money, fiat currency, to make everybody put everybody into poverty. Is except for the people that are the powers that be, that we can have that 10% or 5% or 1% at the top, and then everybody else is and there's no in between. It's just you're all pouring on the dole and have no power. Like you said, you can't take advantage of you get paid your $10,000 for the month or whatever, and you use half of it, and then you invest the other half of it into stocks, bonds, gold, futures, whatever, real estate. And the people that are living in poverty, they don't have that option.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You should kind of say that. I was talking to one of our co-hosts is blind, I should say, and he he was telling me about why he doesn't take money from the government, because they, he's certainly would be entitled to it. And it comes down to the fact that he can't basically work or have more than $2,000 in a bank account, if he takes money from the government. So
unfortunately, we think that, but that's actually not true, and you don't have time to explore that. That's actually not true.
Thanks for the call tonight, David. This has been Free Talk Live. We'll be back tomorrow night. You can give us a call and let us know what you're thinking about.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So